All right, page 856. Okay, so in order to understand Parshas Balak, which is one of the most, I don't even know which word to use. Maybe the word bizarre, bizarre parshas in the Torah. I hate to use the word bizarre, but it's a very, very difficult to understand. By the way, I want to go back, Shia, now that you're here. You weren't here. She had asked at the end of a couple of weeks, last week or something, page 856. Shia had asked when we were speaking about taking on stringencies. Remember, we were talking about taking on stringencies, and I said if you're tense and nervous, then it's not a good thing. That's the line for. So she asked about weightlifting. You gotta feel some pain. Right, in order to progress, there's got to be a little bit of pain, right? That was your question, essentially, right? There's got to be.
So you don't grow if you take it easy.
You don't grow if you take it easy. So that was his quote. It was a very good one. I wanted to speak about that just to clarify. That is true in the areas of what we have to do. For example, we have to daven, and you have to put on tefillin, and you have to study Torah, and you have to be good to people. And sometimes it's worth going the extra mile to try to push a little bit, to build up some muscle. But in the areas where it is what we call voluntary, like stringencies and that sort of thing, there's a line. So, for example, if you're on an airplane and they don't have your kosher meal, right, you can't eat the non-kosher food. Right, you just can't. Whether it makes you tense and nervous or not, that's not an issue. You can't eat it, and that'll build muscle. If you overcome the test, it'll build muscle. If you're in a situation where it's where you want to take on, should I adopt a stringency or not adopt a stringency, and there it's making you tense and nervous, then just drop it. Because that's got to become something that's more internal, where a person feels that this is something that I really should and want to be doing. That's the long and short of it, but there's a line between the two. Okay, here we need a short introduction because we're going to be dealing with stuff. We're dealing with subjects over here which we don't deal with most of the Torah. First of all, there's a concept called witchcraft. And the Torah says earlier in Parshas Mishpatim, the Torah says that mechashefa lo sachaya, a witch is not allowed to live. If I could just ask everybody, put away all technological instruments other than the camera over here. Yeah, black magic, witchcraft, that sort of thing. The Torah prohibits witchcraft, and witchcraft is punishable by capital offense. And there's a whole discussion, what is witchcraft? So the basic understanding of witchcraft in the Torah, again, this is all very basic, and try to see if you can hold all questions till the end. Let me just go through the concepts because I'm trying to just give an introduction. The basic idea of witchcraft is the ability that somebody has to tap into the spiritual realm in order to bring about an effect in the physical world. That means there were people who had an ability, whether it was an innate ability or was an ability that they acquired through study or through practice, where we believe that everything in the physical world has a corresponding spiritual counterpart, what we would call the mazel. And the most basic explanation of witchcraft is the ability to tap into the spiritual realm and cross over these spiritual forces that bring about an effect in the physical world, which one is not allowed to do. So you call black magic, sorcery, witchcraft, it's all the same family. It's all the same area. That's idea number one. Idea number two is the idea of cursing. Now, when it comes to cursing, hi guys, maybe somebody give them the chumashim over there. Please hand them the chumashim and find the place, page 854. If, there's an old saying about sticks and stones, right? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but names will never hurt you. That's not true. Nobody likes to be insulted, and names do hurt, right? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but a feminist will always be insulted. Right? That's a famous line. So the what do you call it? That's not funny. The what do you call it? Being insulted hurts, but sometimes you can walk away from an insult. Some people are big enough to walk away from an insult. You have to be very big in order to be small. Right? That's an interesting expression. If you really want to be, you have to be big to make yourself small. You have to be big to make yourself small. And sometimes just ignore it. Somebody insulted you, called you a name, big deal. If somebody crosses a line and curses a person, then people tend to get defensive. If somebody says to somebody else, he hopes everybody in his family drops dead. The guy says, you say that again, I'm going to plug you. Right? Why? Why is that? He called me stupid is one thing. Start cursing or start wishing ill on family members, then a guy gets very defensive. Why is that? Because deep down inside we're nervous that what if this guy, if he calls me stupid, either I am or I'm not. His calling me stupid isn't going to make me stupid unless I react, then I'm really stupid. But his calling me that isn't going to have an effect. When somebody curses us, somehow we're nervous about a curse, right? We're nervous. And why are we nervous? The answer is because there is a certain strength, there is a power to the mouth. The mouth has power. We don't know exactly how much and where, but there is that concern that when somebody curses, they people, whoa, now you just crossed the line. Insulting and cursing are two different things. Wishing ill on somebody are two different things. The guy says it, and up goes the fist because you want to put a stop to it. The same thing, by the way, goes to dream interpretation. Our dreams interpreted. You have a dream. You want a dream interpreted. You know the Gemara, the Talmud speaks, has about 5 pages about the meaning of dreams and dream interpretations. Now nowadays we put no weight on dreams and no weight on dream interpretations because we don't know the discipline. And the assumption is that our dreams are meaningless. Our dreams are generally a result of what we've thought about during the day or our various experiences during the day, or it could be an experience you had a couple of weeks ago. It doesn't matter. The dreams don't mean anything. However, what does it mean to be able to interpret a dream? So the classic commentaries say that a dream interpreter doesn't even know. A dream interpreter is an innate ability. That means a person has a mouth that could actually pronounce judgment on a dream. How do you like that? It's got to be within a certain framework. So if a guy has a dream that he's being chased by 3 Italians with baseball bats, you can't say, oh, that means you're going to win the lottery soon, right? Because it has no connection to the dream. But if a guy has a dream involving money, so the dream interpreter is saying you're going to lose money, or you're going to make money, that can actually he could pass sentence on the dream. Where is that ability from? The Rashba says, Rashba is one of the classic commentators, he says that's an innate ability that a person has. And that's why if you ever have a disturbing dream, you never get up and say, wow, I had a bad dream. Because you may be a person who could be sentencing your dream to it. You may be sentencing yourself to negative outcome. You never say, wow, that was a bad dream. So if you have a dream that some guy's chasing you around, chasing you with a baseball bat, you get up and you wake up in a cold sweat, you say, wow, I just had a good dream. Always say it's a good dream, right? And in the worst scenario where a person is rattled, the halacha says somebody who had a dream and you feel rattled, you just don't feel, you feel you're disturbed. So there is a formula that that you say in shul. You get 3 people, and there's a formula. They say it's a good dream, it's a good dream, it's a good dream, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is all an introduction. The Torah here talks about a man named Balak, right? Vayar Balak ben Tzipor. There's a man named Balak, the son of Tzipor. Es kol asher asa Yisrael le'amori. Now, if you remember, the end of the last Parsha was that the Jewish people destroyed Sichon and they destroyed Og, the Amori kings. And that's how the last Parsha ended. Now, Balak has seen all of this. And seeing over here, by the way, he didn't have binoculars. He wasn't watching the battle. He didn't get it on the news. Seeing is a higher level of understanding, right? Well, then when somebody explains something, you say, oh, I see. And oh, I see. Right? Understanding at a highest level, because there's even an expression, I'll believe it when I see it. Because we trust our eyes more than we trust our ears or trust anything else. So when something is clear to us, and it's clear in all its detail, we usually go, oh boy, I see what happened over there. You didn't see it, you weren't there. But the way we perceive it is, it's as if we saw it. So Balak has seen, and by the way, Ben Tzipor, his father's name is, what's a Tzipor, gentlemen? A bird. So according to some of the midrashim say that he himself was a sorcerer, and he performed his sorcery by using birds. There's one opinion that says he used to eat the heart of a bird. I don't know. I haven't tried it, so I can't tell you. But apparently that works if you're what do you call it? Now, they are nervous. Vayagar Moav mipnei ha'am me'od. They're very, very nervous of the people. Ki ravu vayokot smoav mipnei b'nei Yisrael, and they're nervous because they're called an and they're called b'nei Yisrael. Now, the reason they're called an is because they can't call them by any sort of nationality, because the Jewish people don't have a nationality. Isn't that interesting? We don't have a nationality. What land are we from? We're not Israelis. We're not Israelis, we're Jews. We're Jews who happen to live in Israel. We're not Israelis, and we're not Argentinians, and we're not Afghanis, right? We're Jews. And wherever Jews are, that's where Jews happen to be. You're an Italian if you came from Italy. That's one of the things Italians have in common. They come from Italy. How do you like that? All studies have shown if you're Italian, that means you came from Italy. If you're Greek, you probably came from Greece, right? And if you're, if you're Afghan, guess where you came from? Probably. No, the Afghan is not Persia, no. But Jew, where do we come from? We are not called Israelis. They call people who live in Israel, they're not Israelis. That's why the world is confused. The world confuses, they cross over between Jews and Israelis. Something happens in Israel, Jews in Argentina suffer. Well, what's the God? They're Argentinians, they're not Israelis. It's because our nationality doesn't, that's why the Torah was given in the desert. The Torah is given to us because our nationality is Torah, not our nationality isn't a land. Our homeland happens to be Israel, but that's not why we're Jews. We're Jews because of Torah, not because of Israel. So they call them, number one, the they're the nation. I don't know what to call them. What should I call them? Israelis? They're not Israelis. They don't say Yalla Bai, and they don't eat sunflower seeds. I can't call them Israelis, so what am I going to call them? Right? And number two, they're the B'nai Yisrael. B'nai Yisrael represents that these are people on a very high level. So he's very, very nervous. So Balak sends, and he realizes war is futile against the Jewish people. So he's going to have to resort to some other, nowadays, isn't what do you call it? Chemical warfare is illegal. Right? Chemical warfare is illegal unless you live in Syria. Right? Chemical warfare, or Russia, right? Chemical warfare is illegal. In those days, there's only one thing more powerful than going and using physical swords and bows and arrows, which is a curse. Right? Use a curse. Let's see if we could curse these people. But to curse the people, you need a professional curser. You can't just get anybody to curse. Most people, somebody curses you, you're not too worried about it. What if you get a pro? You get a professional curser, and he comes out and curses you. I told you I knew a guy. He had a problem because his home. The guy had a very fancy home, and he had a balcony that he wanted to close in. He was an American guy. He's married to an Israeli Sephardi woman, and he wanted to close in this balcony. The downstairs neighbor didn't want him to do it. So they came up, they said, if you close in the balcony, it was an illegal closure here in Israel. He said, if you close it in, I'm going to inform the city officials, which means he wanted to get paid off. So the guy didn't want to pay him off. And it wasn't like a situation where he's going to close in the balcony and block his view. So he didn't, so he was pretty irritated about it. So what he started doing, the neighbor said, well, if you do, I'm going to inform. So what the guy started doing is started bouncing a basketball on the floor at about 2 a.m., working on his left-handed dribble, and he would tap a broomstick on the floor, at odd hours, try to maybe reason with the downstairs neighbor, to drop his, and the downstairs neighbor started tapping on the ceiling with the broomstick, but it's not the same, when you're like this, you can watch TV and bounce the ball, what are you going to do, stand there with a broomstick? So things got nasty, and then one day the upstairs neighbor's wife was coming home, she was in the parking lot, and the downstairs neighbor's wife, who's been victimized by the dribbling basketball at this point. I mean, they started, but they're now getting pretty, they're let's put it this way, they're sleep deprived, and they were downstairs. She met the upstairs neighbor's wife in the parking lot, and she said to her, I just came back from a funeral, and I cursed you and your entire family in front of an open grave. So that spooked her. And then her husband got involved, and he banged down the door downstairs. Then the police got involved. Now everybody gets along, like Egypt and Israel. So they made some sort of peace treaty. I'm not sure exactly how that worked. Now, by the way, I don't know that a curse in front of an open grave is any worse than a curse, in a swimming pool. So I'm not sure, I don't know that cursing, but it's got that spooky sound to it. I mean, if you want to curse in front of dead bodies, you can open up your freezer, there are dead chickens in there, so curse them in front of the chickens. So I don't know, but bottom is, it gets people nervous. People are worried about the potency of the curse. So what does Balak do? Now take a look in Pasuk Hey. It's 5 lines from the top. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Vayishlach malachim, he sends messengers. Malachim over here means messengers. El Bilam ben Beor. Now this man Bilam is a sorcerer who is going to cross over into actual prophecy. Pisora asher al hanohar, eretz b'nei amoli krolo. He sends him to his location to call him Lamor, and he says the following: Hine am yotza mimitzrayim, this nation. And again, he never refers to them as the Jewish people. He doesn't refer to them as the Jewish people by name. He says this nation has come out of Israel. Hina chisa es ein haaretz. They have covered the entire surface of the earth. Hu yoshev bimuli. 2.5 billion Jews. 2.5 billion Jews took up a very large area. Imagine what 2.5 million people is. That's a large, that's a city. That's like that. You're talking about a massive amount. You got about 2.5 million Jews out there. And he says, I got this entire nation covering miles. And they've covered Kisa es ein ha'aretz. They've covered the surface of the earth. The ayin is from the word ayin, the vision. You can't even see the earth there. There's so many of them. So the commentaries point out that what was it about the Jewish people? Hold all the questions for a while. But what was it about the Jewish people that's really bothering people? Why is the world so bothered by us? Why are they so focused on us? And so everything that's happening in the world, at the end of the day, it's all about the Jews. Right? It's always the Jews, right? If what do you call? You could have the Tutsis and the Hutsis were slaughtering each other, and nobody says anything, and they're killing killing citizens in Ukraine and wholesale, and nobody says anything. And if a Jew on the West Bank builds a balcony on his house, then it's an international. The United Nations Security Council. It's everybody. The Jews. Right? No matter what happens. Right? No matter what happens, Israel's always out. Why is it? Why? Because they're irritated. They're bothered by us. How come Israel's got to play by different rules? Israel's got to play. I remember when Obama. He said Obama made a very dramatic announcement. There had been a terrorist attack, and Obama made a very dramatic public announcement. Israel has a right to defend itself. And I think to myself, well, shkayach, thank you very much for your permission. If missiles would be coming over the border from Mexico, do you think you would defend yourself? If missiles, if France would be attacked by Algeria, do you think they'd be able to defend? What do you mean we have a right? You mean there's a havamina? Havamina means you would have thought we don't have a right to defend ourselves, right? We don't have a right. I think I remember Time magazine once said with Israel there was an attack, so Israel bombed somebody, or one of Syria, Lebanon, whoever they bombed. I remember Time magazine referring to Israel as, well, the country that never turns the other cheek went and bombed, the Syrians or whatever it was after we had been attacked originally. The country had never, and I think to myself, I didn't remember America, they're a Christian country, theoretically. I don't remember them turning the other cheek when Pearl Harbor got bombed. I don't they didn't turn any other cheek, right? They bombed a few other people's cheeks, but they didn't turn their own cheek. What do you mean? No, we're held to a different standard. And why is it that we're bothered? You know what Hitler said? Hitler said the Jews are the conscience of mankind. That's what bothers them. Because they know we're different, that they know we live by different standards. And so the world looks at us and says, you guys are interfering with our fun. You are creating a guilty conscience for me.
Why is
right?
it?
Why is it? Because it's a fact. That's how God created us. Were you at Kiddush? Any of you who were at Kiddush, have any of you been to everybody been to a Shabbos meal? You've been to a Shabbos meal at some point or other?
Yes.
Huh? You never been to a Shabbos meal? Thank you. Yeah, that was. So have you ever been to a Shabbos meal? Can I ask anyway, did anybody here ever protest at Kiddush?
No. Why would we?
Why would you protest? Because somebody's standing there with a cup of wine, and he announces in public, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, that God has chosen us from all the nations. And you're sitting there giving your tacit approval with your silence. Because you're sitting there, yeah, and I'm going to have some gefilte fish to celebrate this. Yeah. Right? So if you haven't protested, that means you approve. That means we are the chosen people. Now, because we're the conscience of mankind, because we live it, when I say we, it means if you're observing the Torah, and the Torah demands a certain level of morality and a certain rejection of idol worship and not to be mean to other people and all sorts of obligations. So the world is troubled by us. That means that we have a moral standard. If you look in the religious world, those of you who, I don't know how much you're familiar with, in the religious world, there are very few 13-year-old drug abusers. There are very few 20-year-old drug abusers. They're very few relative to the rest of the world. There are very few. Now, there's a statement in the Talmud. The Talmud makes a statement that says, "Mitoch genusan ata shomea shivchat." From the criticism of the Jewish people, you hear how great they are. That means if I tell you Steph Curry had a bad game because he was 6 of 9 shooting, so that tells you what I think of Steph Curry. That means I expect better from him. The criticism of him tells you what his level is. If I say LeBron had a great game because he was 1 of 19 shooting, right? That tells you what I think of LeBron. So what you say about a person, what you say the criticism, with the standard you hold the Jewish people to, wow, we're held to a very exacting standard over here. Where Moshe Rabbeinu, where a guy picks up his fist and Moshe Rabbeinu says, "You Russia, you wicked person. You're a wicked person for even lifting your fist. You didn't even plug the guy. All you did was lift your fist. And you're already called a wicked." Well, that tells you what's expected of us. If the newspapers report that a Jew in Israel, they splash it all over the headlines. A Jew in Israel, he spray painted a bus stop. A religious Jew spray painted a bus stop. They made international news. Do you know that? When which turned out, by the way, it wasn't even true. There were immodest pictures on bus stops in Israel. So somebody covered it over by spray painting it. And it turned out to be a secular Jew trying to frame the religious Jews. But at the beginning they thought it was a religious Jew. That made headlines in England in the newspapers. Could you imagine me telling you somebody spray painted a bus stop in New York? Right? Somebody spray painted a bus stop. Nobody. Well, what took you so long? How did the bus stop land? And somebody said international news. Well, that tells you. So in Israel, if the anti-religious newspapers splash away, if a religious man is caught embezzling, we shouldn't embezzle. It's prohibited. But a religious man caught embezzling. Why is that? Because they're holding us. That's the evidence of what's expected from us. That's how great we are. So if you look at the religious community, there's very little drug. Doesn't mean there's no drug abuse. Doesn't mean there's no drug abuse. I once took one Acamol more than I should have. And there's there's no teen pregnancy in Jewish unless the girl's married. Right, which happens all the time in the Jewish world, right? Which happens, Sometimes the girls don't get married that young. Sometimes the girl gets married, she's 20 years old already. Family's worried. There's very little violence. There's very little domestic abuse. There's very little. We're not perfect, otherwise we wouldn't need a Torah. Obviously, we're human beings, and human beings have flaws. And sometimes we gossip inappropriately, sometimes we give an invitation, eat an inappropriate. But overall, when you compare us to everybody else, we're outstanding. We're absolutely outstanding. I told you, some of you guys have heard this, I told you, my son, I'll use this as an example. My son was in a yeshiva in Israel where there were 600 males in the dormitory between the ages of 18 and 22. 600 males between the ages of 22. He was in the yeshiva for 4 or 5 years. Not once in 4 or 5 years was there a fist fight in the yeshiva. Could you imagine? Take any other place, nationality, and plug in those numbers, right? What would you get in an all-male dormitory in 5, 6 years? And there was not one fist. It's unheard of. It's unconscionable. Even when Jews are in shul and they're barking at each other. I should take it. I should have gotten the aliyah. But nobody ever hits. I told you in Israel, two cab drivers got into a fight in Israel. They banged into each other. So they started yelling at each other, calling each other names. So one guy pulled a gun on the other guy. So at that point, the second guy went over and he started hitting him. Why was he hitting him? He was hitting him because you insulted me by pulling the gun. We both know you're not going to use a gun on me. What are you? You're calling me a fool by pulling the gun. That's when he got insulted. Because we're not going to hit a gun. How often do you ever see fist fights? Okay, now things have changed a little bit. Things got more violent. The point is, pay attention, look at the words now. Hinachisa es ein ha'aretz. The commentators say, you know what's bothering them? Ein ha'aretz, how does the article translate it? They've covered the surface of the earth. So the Chassam Sofer says, sure, that's what's bothering the nation. The nations live on the surface level. It looks good, it smells good, it tastes good, indulge. And the Jewish people cover the surface of the earth. That means we're digging deeper. We're looking for a deeper purpose in life. That bothers people. That there should be any sort of morality, any sort of deeper meaning for life, that's our job. That's what's really bothering. Symbolically, that's what's bothering them. Okay. If you take a look at, I'm skipping on ahead now. So he sends for Bilam, and Bilam comes along, and he sends officials with him, and Bilam is, hold for 1 second, Bilam is what he called. Bilam is, he's a money grubber. He wants money, and he wants honor, he wants prestige, and Bilam's going to come, and he's going to be the guy to curse the Jewish people. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, very quickly, though. Go ahead. No, not you, Meir. I forgot. Yeah. Okay. Very quickly.
So cover the surface of the earth, like that's also an exaggeration. I mean, they will find it.
It's a figure of speech. Yeah.
So could it also be like interpreted like, kind of like, kind of for the Exodus where we would then, the exile when we would then spread across the entire surface of the earth?
Well, right now we're not on the exile yet. We're not on the exile. They just come out of Egypt. They're all together. Right? The truth. Do me a favor, guys. Hold all the questions. I want to cover that. I'll take the question, Mayor, very quickly. But I really want to cover some ground over there. A few points I want to get to. Yeah.
So also talking about the surface of the earth, like, is it a curse that people is so?
He's not cursing. No, right now he's not cursing.
It's just natural.
No, he's just saying this is the fact. This is the fact. That's data we covered here. That's an interesting idea that he says it could be that also in exile we cover the surface. We're all over the place. Everywhere you go, you're going to find Jews. Everywhere you're going to find Jews, especially where things are being given away for free. Everywhere in the world, you're going to find but we don't cover the surface of the earth. We expand over the surface. We're everywhere, which, by the way, is part of the blessing of the Jewish people, because the nations that try to annihilate us, we're never condensed in one place. So even if you knock off some of the Jews in one place, there are other Jews in other places. Okay, but let's go on. Let's go on. Okay, so he calls this guy. He calls Bilam to come, and he wants to what he call it. And then Bilam speaks to God, and Bilam is a God believer. This is where he parts company from the other goyim. Bilam, he's an idol worshiper, but he believes in God as the supreme being, which is why he's chosen above all other nations. Not only that, he comes from a place called Aram. And Aram is where Avram Avinu was. So there's a certain influence from Avram Avinu that Bilam is going to use, because he's a monotheist up to a point. He believes in the one God, and that's something that he's gotten, the commentaries say that he's gotten from Avram Avinu. On the other hand, he's also an idol worshiper. We're going to see that he's even worse. So if you skip down, you guys can fill in the story on your own, but if you take a look at the bottom of page 858, Vayakam Bilam baboker, Bilam gets up in the morning. Now, according to some of the commentators, he was one of Paro's advisors. In Egypt, when the Jewish people were in Egypt, Bilam was a professional advisor, and he's the one who advised Paro they should start throwing Jewish babies into the Nile. So Bilam has it in for the Jewish people for a long time already. And then at the bottom of page 858, last line says, Vayakam Bilam baboker, he gets up early in the morning. Vayachavosh asono, he saddles his donkey, or donkeyette, as the case may be. Vayelach im sarei Moav, he saddles his donkey. Now the commentaries, the Gemara points out over here, the Talmud says, hatred distorts rational thinking. The Gemara also says, love distorts rational thinking. When a person loves, so a person is passionate about something, it distorts rational thinking. Where do we find this the first time? Avram Avinu. When he was told to go and sacrifice his son, when does he get up? Gets up early in the morning. And he saddles his own donkey. Avram Avinu had many servants. Why? He was so passionate about doing what God wanted him to do. So he saddles his donkey. And a person who's ever been lovesick, you do all sorts of weird things. When a person's lovesick and when a person hates, they also do all sorts of weird things. When you hate, your rational thought is distorted. So Bilam, who's a prominent man, gets up in the morning and he says that, that's roughly the equivalent of the President of the United States getting up in the morning and pumping gasoline into his own limousine. Right? Can you imagine the president can't wait? He's going to a meeting where they're going to decide to nuke Syria because he hates Syria and he can't wait to get this done. So he gets up early and he pumps, or South Korea or North Korea, and he goes and he pumps gasoline into his own limousine because his hatred distorts his rational thinking. So Bilam, who's a prominent man, he gets up and he saddles his own donkey, and they start riding. Now here is one of the most famous little episodes that take place anywhere in the Torah. Vayichar af Elokim ki olechu. God gets angry that Bilam is traveling. Vayisyatsev malach Hashem baderech lesoton lo. The angel of God gets in the way. V'hu rochev al asono ushnei ne'orav imo. He is riding on his donkey, and his two accompanying lads are with him. So what happens over here? The angel starts blocking the path. We're going to read a few psukim, gentlemen. V'ateireh ha'ason es malach Hashem nitzav baderech. The donkey sees the angel. V'charbo shlufa biyado. The angel standing there with a sword. And only the donkey sees it. V'atei ha'ason min haderech v'atelech basoda. So the donkey veers off the path into the field. Vayach Bilam es ha'ason la'atos haderech. Now Bilam hits the donkey to get it back on the path. Now, right here, Bilam is already guilty. What's he guilty of? This is a donkey that is well trained. And Bilam understands that he's going to do something that Hashem does not approve of. And here he is, and he's riding on his donkey. And also the donkey who has never not cooperated with him, also the donkey veers off of the path. At that point, Bilam should be asking himself, what's going on? Why is this? It's an anomaly. Why did this just take place? Instead of that, what does he do? He smacks the donkey to get it back on the road. Okay, let's see what happens. Vayamod malach Hashem b'mishal hakramim goder mizeh v'goder mizeh. Then the angel blocks the path. There's a wall on each side. It's a more narrow area. V'ateireh hasan es malach Hashem. The donkey again sees the angel, this narrow area with a wall on each side. V'atilochetz el hakir. The donkey presses against the wall. V'tilchatz etz regel bilam el hakir. And it crushes his leg against the wall. Vayosef lehakosa. He goes and he continues to hit the donkey. Two more psukim, gentlemen. He hits the donkey again. Vayosef malach Hashem avar vayamad b'makom tzar asher ein derech lintos yamin usom. Now the angel stands in a place where there's no room at all. It's a narrow path. There's no room to turn at all. V'ateira ha'ason es malach Hashem v'tirbat stachas bilam. The angel crouches. The donkey crouches down, doesn't move. Vayichar af Bilam vayaches ha'oson mamaka. Bilam gets upset, so he smacks it with his stick. So, the first thing that we have to focus on over here is that Bilam should have picked up the clue. Now, if you notice what happened, first the donkey veered off the path. There's plenty of place to move around. Then it's a narrow area. Then it says there's no room to turn around at all. The symbolism is obviously, when a person is on his way to sin, when a person is on his way to do something wrong, the first time you've done it, let's say you get a Jew who's raised Torah observant, and in a moment of weakness, he can't wait to taste the piece of pepperoni pizza. Nobody's looking, and all right, okay, he feels bad. Can he do tshuva?
Yeah.
How can he do tshuva?
Sure,
Just say, bang your chest, turn around. I'm not going to do it again. What happens if he goes the next day and again he sneaks a piece? Gets a little harder to do tshuva for several reasons. Number one, you lose a certain amount of divine assistance. You need God. If you're not too bad, so God will help you out. But when you get a little more firmly immersed in the sin, so it's a little more difficult. Number one. Number two, psychologically, I know kids who were raised the first time they flicked the light switch on Shabbos. A kid who was raised, imagine kids raised in a Shomer Shabbos home. And he decides, he's struggling with it. And then one day he decides, that's it. I got kosher. He stopped a long time ago. He stopped a long time ago. And then one day he decides he's gonna break Shabbos too. The first time he hits the light switch, you know what the reaction is? Like, flick. No lightning. All right, I made it. The next day it's more like, flick. By the third day you forgot all about it. It doesn't even bother you anymore. You become so conditioned that you're not even bothered. The first time you did the Aver, the donkey's giving you a warning, Bilam. You got lots of room to turn back. You keep on going, it's a narrower passage. You keep on going, it's an even narrower passage. There's no room to turn right or left. Now, No one ever loses the ability, except under certain circumstances, no one really loses the ability to do tshuva. A person can do tshuva on his deathbed. A person who was wicked his entire life, a person who was evil his entire life, and on his deathbed he says, I regret everything, he dies as a tzaddik. Problem is that a person doesn't know exactly when that's going to be, and he might not have that opportunity. Bilam this is a symbol. And why does he hit the donkey? We should all be able to relate to this. What's your reaction when somebody rebukes you or tries to correct you? Most people in the world, when somebody comes and tells you you're doing something wrong, what's your reaction? Huh? You get angry, right? You get angry. Bilam, the donkey's trying to communicate a message. And the donkey's not intelligent, by the way. The donkey has zero intelligence. This is just a donkey. This is just a donkey. The donkey is a tool in God's hands. But the fact that the donkey veered off and it's a cooperative donkey, you should already be picking up a message. Bilam hitting the donkey symbolically is those that we resent giving us the message. Even when it's a proper message, by the way, and even if it's not rebuked. You ever been on a ladder painting? You know, you're painting on the ladder, and somebody in the room comes in, walking by and says, hey, why don't you hold it like this? You know, right? What's the first thing that goes through your mind? Well, we can't even say in public. Why don't you? Whatever you would fill that blank with. That's what goes through our mind, right? He didn't even criticize me. He's trying to help me. He's telling me your job will be easier if you hold it the other way. We don't like being corrected. So Bilam hits the donkey symbolic. That's a symbol of a person being corrected. Is there a sitter over there somewhere? Is there a sitter on the table? No sitters there. You got a sitter over there?
Here, I'm not sure.
Is that a regular sitter? Okay. So let me show you something. Let me show you something, gentlemen. If you take a look in Pirkei Avos, the last chapter of Pirkei Avos, on page 578 in this. Yeah, okay. That's good. That works. Okay. So the Gemara, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says the following. Now pay attention very carefully. Anybody who has these three traits is a disciple of Abraham. And three other traits is he's a disciple of Bilam. You have three characteristics that makes you a disciple of Avram Avinu. And it's an interesting parallel over here, because the Gemara says Bilam tried to get up early and saddle his donkey to show how passionate he is about this. And Hashem said to Bilam, sorry, Avram Avinu beat you to it already. Because Avram Avinu showed how passionate he was about doing a mitzvah. So that Bilam and Avram Avinu, we're going to see a very interesting connection on several levels. So he says, if a person, ayin tova, you're generous. V'ruach nemucha, you're not dominated by physical desires. You have control over your physical desires. V'nefesh shvala, you're contrite, you're a humble person. You are generous, you're happy for other people, you've got a good eye, what they call a good eye. And you are in control of your desires. And you're humble, you're self-effacing. Then you are a disciple of Avram Avinu. Ayin ra'ah, you have a begrudging eye. It says Bilam was jealous of everybody he ever met. V'ruach gavoha, he's out of control in his desires. We'll see in a little while how, to what extent. V'nefesh rechava, he's a haughty person. Then you're a disciple of Bilam HaRasha. And the Mishnah goes on to say, what's the difference between them? How does it manifest itself? It says the disciples, ironically, the disciples of Avram Avinu, they enjoy this world. How do you like that? Exactly the opposite of what we would think. And the disciples of Bilam, they have Gehenna in this world. They suffer in this world. And then they got punished in the world to come. One of the classic mistakes people make, people equate pleasure with happiness. People think the more pleasure I have, the more happy and fulfilled and content I will be. And if you stop and think about it, gentlemen, if that was true, so we should all become addicted to heroin, right? Because heroin apparently is a very pleasurable experience. I can't say that the closest I've ever gotten to is a fluffernutter, peanut butter with marshmallow fluff. That's about the worst drugs I've done, but they are close to it. But theoretically, heroin apparently is very pleasurable, but anybody with any brains isn't going to get involved. Why is that? And not only that, did you ever help? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you all. You ever helped a little old lady cross the street? or even in Israel, you got up and you gave your seat to somebody, an old person on the bus, or you gave some money to tzedakah. How do you feel when you've done that? You feel pretty good, right? You feel pretty good. But there's nothing pleasurable about that in a physical way. There's nothing, but to the contrary, you gave of yourself. The answer is, if you live like an Avraham Avinu, then you enjoy this world. We're happy, we're in a good mood. The happiest people in the world that I've ever met, the happiest people in the world, are people who do for other people. I don't know, a little girl was once saying to her mother, "Mommy, I have nothing to do." So her mother said, "If you have nothing to do something for somebody else." I didn't want to hear that. It wasn't me, right? But that's the fact. Now, watch this. There are three things that are listed in this Mishnah. They are, pay attention carefully, Mary, you're going to love this. Ayin, Tova, it's an Ayin, remember the letter Ayin. Ruach Gevoha, or Ruach Nemucha, and Nefesh. There's Ayin, there's Ruach, and there's Nefesh, okay? Help, I'm attached, right? Ayin, Nefesh, and Ruach. There's, I feel like the weatherman on TV. You ever see those guys with the, never understood them. Guy gets up there, instead of telling me what it's going to be like tomorrow, guy's talking about, well, we got a warm front coming in over here from the Gulf of Mexico, you know, and he goes, well, I care, you know, what, oh, and precipitation is 77%, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, you know, so I'll precipitate, okay? So here, it says you got an ayin ra or ayin tova, ruach gevoa or ruach nemucha, and a nefesh. Now, if you rearrange these letters, you get the letter na'ar. Why do I bring that up? If you take a look at the pasuk, if you'd like to look back at pasuk 22, so it says, Vayisyasev malach Hashem baderech, second line on the page. V'hu rochev al asono u'shnei ne'orov imo. Shnei ne'orov imo. His na'ars are with him. That means Bilam's character traits are with him everywhere he goes. Nun ayin resh. And you'll notice here it says ne'orov imo. They are with him. Turn back to Bereshis for a second. On page 1, on page 102, page 100, 3 lines from the bottom on page 100. Vayashkem Avram baboker, just talking about the Akedah. 3 lines from the bottom. Avram gets up early in the morning. Vayachavosh es chamoro, he saddles his donkey. Vayikach es shnei ne'orav ito. Here it says he took ne'orav imo. He takes his two lads ito with him, and here it says he takes his 2 lads with him. But by Avram Avinu it says ito, and by Bilam it says imo. What's the difference between ito and imo? And again, symbolically, it's talking about their character traits. The difference is imo is more closely linked than ito. And what that means is, when we have character traits, are they dominating us or we're in control of them? We hope. By Bilam it says he takes his character traits imo. They dominate him. He's out of control. He's pursuing honor. He's physically driven. He can't get, his innate character controls him. Avram Avinu, he's in control of his traits. By the way, does any of you know, are you aware, what is Avram known for? Chesed. What's Yitzchak known for? Vura, din, strict justice, right? And what's Yaakov known for? Emes, truth. Very interesting. So take a look at the life of Avram Avinu, the man of kindness. He abandons his elderly father. He throws his nephew out of the house. He gets involved in a world war. He commits an act of self-mutilation on himself and his entire household. He takes a knife to his second son's neck, and he's called the man of kindness. There's nobody in the Torah walking around with a knife as often as Avram Avinu. Yitzchak is strict justice, right? His name means laughter. He entertains his wife. He tolerates the wayward son. He gives in. He walks away from the fight with the Pelishtim. This is the man of strict justice. And Yaakov's the man of truth. He deceives his brother, deceives his father, deceives his brother, deceives his father-in-law, deceives stuff. Everywhere you go, touch him where you will, there's a deception. And he's the man of truth. Isn't that an interesting little irony? How do you like that?
Paradox.
What's that? What's that?
Paradox.
The paradox, correct. It's a paradox. What's the answer? The answer is that are you in control of your traits or do traits control you? If you're a man of kindness and some guy in the street comes to you, I'm a kind person, and some guy in the street says, hey brother, could you spare a buck? And he's got a rusty needle dangling out of his arm. And he says, hey, could you spare a buck? If you're a kind person and you give him $1, you're not in control of your kindness. You're just a softie who has no control whatsoever. You're not a kind person. The kindest thing you could do is take the guy, turn him around, and bring him to a rehab center. And if you're a person who is strict justice and your son needs a little tolerance and you don't have tolerance for him, that's not justice, that's cruelty. You have to control the trait, not that the trait, that's exactly why the test for all the forefathers do the, if you're a Yaakov Avinu, you're a man of truth, but now you got to go and steal the blessing from your father because your mother told you through prophecy that you have to go steal the blessing. I cannot tell a lie. I never understood that about George Washington. I cannot tell a lie. Yeah, he's held up as the paragon of honesty, right? I cannot tell. George, who chopped down the cherry tree? I cannot tell a lie. It was me. Well, what are you going to damaging property for, right? Instead of chopping down trees, you won't have to lie. What do you chop the tree down to begin with? Yeah, I put the brick through the window. It was me. Yeah, oh, what a man. What a man. He's honest. He told us the truth. Well, what do you tell him? Don't go put brick through the windows. You won't have to get there. The test of a Bilam and an Avram Avinu, that's the difference. If you're an Avram Avinu, you take it with you. You take the traits with you. You're in control of your traits. By Bilam, they're emo. They are part of him. He has no control over himself. And then we'll see tomorrow how dominant those traits are in the Bilam. Okay? So we'll continue tomorrow. Page 8.